The family safe was in my bedroom right beside my youngest son's ashes. No one was ever allowed near it. During a trip, my son and his gold-digger wife stayed at my house. What I saw on the cameras made my heart stop. That's when I put my plan into motion. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Gregory, and at 63 years old, I thought I understood what betrayal looked like. I was wrong. The flight from Denver back to Phoenix had been delayed for 3 hours, giving me plenty of time to think about my grandson Tommy's wedding next month. I'd been visiting my sister Margaret, helping her sort through our mother's belongings after she passed last spring. It was emotional work, but necessary. What I didn't expect was to return home to discover that some things are more sacred than others, and some violations cut deeper than any knife. I pulled into my driveway at 8:47 that Tuesday evening, exhausted from travel but grateful to be home. My house sat quiet in the desert twilight, exactly as I'd left it 5 days earlier. Or so I thought. The routine was always the same when I returned from trips. Drop the bags, check the mail, and review the security cameras. Living alone since Martha died 6 years ago, I'd learned to be cautious. The camera system had been Stephen's idea, actually, back when he still seemed to care about my well-being. "Dad, you're getting older, and that neighborhood isn't as safe as it used to be," he'd said. I'd installed 8 cameras throughout the house, including one in my bedroom. I settled into my office chair with a cup of coffee, clicking through the camera footage from the past 5 days. Monday through Wednesday showed nothing unusual. Thursday morning, I fast-forwarded through empty hallways and quiet rooms. Then, Thursday afternoon at 2:15, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Stephen's car in my driveway, and with him, Layla. My hands trembled as I watched my 41-year-old son walk into my house with his wife of 3 years. They weren't supposed to be here. I hadn't given them permission. More importantly, I'd specifically told Stephen I'd be unreachable during my trip to Margaret's, handling family business that required my full attention. But what I saw next shattered something inside me that I didn't even know could break. They went straight to my bedroom, not to the kitchen for a snack, not to the living room to wait for me. Straight to my bedroom, where they stood before the antique mahogany chest that serves as both dresser and safe. The chest where I keep my most precious possessions, the documents that represent a lifetime of work, and most sacred of all, the small pewter urn containing the ashes of my youngest son, Michael. Michael died when he was just 22, a car accident on a rainy night 14 years ago. Stephen had been 27 then, and for a while grief had brought us closer together. We'd mourned together, supported each other through the darkest period of our lives. I'd thought that shared loss had created an unbreakable bond between us. I was watching that bond shatter in real time. Layla stood with her hands on her hips, surveying my room like she owned it. She pointed at the chest, and I could see her lips moving, giving Stephen instructions. My son hesitated. His shoulders slumped in a way that told me he knew this was wrong. But he moved toward the chest anyway. The safe built into the chest required a combination that only I knew, or so I'd believed. Stephen pulled out his phone, and I realized with growing horror that he must have watched me open it during one of his visits. He'd memorized the numbers, the trust I'd shown him, the casual way I'd accessed my important documents while he was in the room had been weaponized against me. The chest opened with a soft click that I couldn't hear through the camera but felt in my soul. Layla immediately pushed past Stephen, reaching into the safe with the confidence of someone who belonged there. She pulled out document folders, my grandmother's jewelry, the stock certificates I'd been saving for Stephen's inheritance. But what made me actually gasp aloud was watching her move the pewter urn aside like it was just another obstacle. Michael's ashes. She moved Michael's ashes aside like they were nothing. I had to pause the video. My coffee cup sat forgotten as I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just theft. This was desecration. The spot where Michael's urn sat was sacred to me, the one place in the house where I felt closest to my lost son. Every morning for 14 years, I'd touched that urn and said good morning to Michael. Every night I'd wished him peaceful rest. They knew this. Stephen knew this. He'd seen me perform this ritual countless times during his visits. He knew that chest, that corner of my bedroom, was hallowed ground. When I pressed play again, I watched Layla photograph documents with her phone while Stephen stood guard. She was methodical, efficient, like she'd planned this. She photographed bank statements, insurance policies, the deed to the house, even my medical records. Stephen kept glancing toward the doorway, clearly nervous, but he never tried to stop her. After 28 minutes, they carefully returned everything to its place. Layla positioned Michael's urn exactly where it had been, and Stephen closed the safe, spinning the combination lock. They walked through the house briefly, but I could tell their mission was complete. By 3:51, they were gone. I sat in my office until well past midnight, replaying the footage over and over, hoping I'd misunderstood what I'd seen, but there was no misinterpreting it. My son and daughter-in-law had violated the most sacred space in my home, treating my grief and my privacy like obstacles to be overcome. The financial documents were one thing. The jewelry, even the cash I kept in there, could be replaced. But they'd desecrated Michael's resting place. They'd turned my bedroom, my sanctuary, into a crime scene. As I finally climbed the stairs to that very bedroom, I noticed something I'd missed in my exhaustion. The carpet near the chest showed slight indentations where they'd knelt. The urn had been moved just slightly, maybe half an inch from where I always kept it. If I hadn't seen the video, I might have dismissed it as my imagination. But I had seen the video. I knew the truth. I touched Michael's urn, whispering my usual good night, but for the first time in 14 years, the ritual felt violated. They'd tainted even the sacred connection between father and son. Standing there in the darkness, I realized that Stephen and Layla had made a critical mistake. They'd assumed I was just a lonely old man who wouldn't notice, wouldn't fight back, wouldn't protect what was mine. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling while Michael's urn sat just 3 feet away on the chest they'd violated. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Layla's hands pushing past my son, saw her moving Michael's ashes aside like they were nothing more than an inconvenient paperweight. By sunrise, I'd made a decision. I needed to know everything. I spent Wednesday morning reviewing every second of that Thursday footage, taking notes, screenshotting the clearest images of their faces. But more importantly, I needed to understand what they'd actually seen, what information they'd gathered during their 28-minute invasion of my privacy. The safe contained more than I'd initially remembered. Beyond the obvious documents and jewelry, there were handwritten letters from Martha, Michael's high school graduation certificate, and a folder containing information about a life insurance policy worth $350,000. There was also a smaller envelope containing the combination to my safety deposit box at First National Bank. The weight of what they now knew settled over me like a suffocating blanket. They hadn't just violated my space, they'd essentially cataloged my entire financial life. Around 10:30, my phone rang. Stephen's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I considered not answering. But I needed to hear his voice, needed to see if I could detect any guilt, any indication that he understood the magnitude of what they'd done. "Dad, hey, how was your trip to Aunt Margaret's?" His tone was casual, friendly even. No nervousness, no hesitation. He was either an exceptional actor or genuinely believed he'd gotten away with it. "It was good, son." Emotional, but good. "We got through most of Mom's things." "That's great. I know that's been weighing on you." A pause. "Listen, Layla and I were thinking about coming by this weekend, maybe taking you to dinner. It's been too long since we've spent time together." The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had they robbed me, but now they wanted to play the caring family members, probably to assess whether I discovered their intrusion. "That sounds nice," I heard myself saying. "I'd like that." "Perfect. How about Saturday around 6? We'll pick you up." "Oh, Doris." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen trying to process the conversation. Stephen had sounded genuinely warm, affectionate even. Either he was a better manipulator than I'd ever realized, or Layla had somehow convinced him that what they'd done was acceptable, even necessary. I decided I needed more information. Thursday afternoon, I drove to Best Buy and purchased additional security equipment. Not just cameras this time, but audio recording devices, small enough to be hidden throughout the house. If they were planning to return, if this Saturday dinner was reconnaissance for another invasion, I wanted to hear every word they said. The elderly sales clerk, a man named Robert, who looked to be about my age, helped me select devices that could be controlled remotely through my phone. These are popular with folks who want to keep an eye on caregivers, he said. The audio quality is excellent, and they're virtually undetectable once installed. I didn't tell him I was using them to spy on my own family. Friday, I spent the entire day installing the new equipment. Tiny microphones in the living room, kitchen, and hallway. I left my bedroom alone. I couldn't bear the thought of hearing their voices in that sacred space again. But everywhere else in the house was now under audio surveillance. Saturday evening arrived like a storm I'd been watching approach for days. At exactly 6 o'clock, Stephen's silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as they both got out, Layla in a bright red dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, Stephen in the kind of casual blazer he'd started wearing since marrying her. They knocked on the front door, which struck me as odd. Stephen had always just walked in, calling out, "Dad, it's me," as he entered. The knock felt formal, distant. "Dad, you look great," Stephen said, embracing me briefly. Layla offered her cheek for a kiss, her smile bright and seemingly genuine. "Thank you for taking me to dinner," I said. "I've been looking forward to it." "Our pleasure," Layla replied. "We thought Seasons would be nice. You haven't been there yet, have you?" Seasons was expensive, the kind of place where entrees started at $45. Either they were feeling generous or they wanted something significant from me. During the drive, they kept the conversation light. Layla talked about her book club. Stephen mentioned a promotion he was expecting at work. Normal family chatter, the kind we'd shared countless times before. But underneath it all, I felt the weight of what I knew, what they didn't know I knew. Dinner was an exercise in performance art. They asked about my health, my plans for the holidays, whether I needed help with anything around the house. Layla was particularly attentive, asking if I'd been taking my medications regularly, whether I ever felt confused or forgetful. "Sometimes I worry about you living alone," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "At your age, it's only natural to need more support." The concern in her voice sounded genuine, but knowing what I knew, it felt like a snake preparing to strike. Stephen nodded in agreement. "Dad, we've talked about this before. Maybe it's time to consider some changes. There are some beautiful assisted living communities nearby. You could have all the independence you want, but with people around if you need help." There it was, the real purpose of this dinner. "I'm managing fine," I said carefully. "The house is paid for. I know my neighbors and I have my routines." "Of course you are," Layla said quickly. "We're not saying you aren't. We just want to make sure you're safe and comfortable as you get older." The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner. Subtle suggestions disguised as caring concern, gentle pressure wrapped in family love. They were good at it, I had to admit. If I hadn't seen the video footage, I might have been touched by their apparent devotion. But I had seen the footage. I knew this dinner was just another phase of whatever plan they were executing. When they dropped me off at home, Stephen walked me to the door. "Dad, I want you to know how much I love you," he said, his hand on my shoulder. "Mom would want me to take care of you, and I take that responsibility seriously." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of the son I'd raised, the boy who'd cried at his brother's funeral, the young man who'd once called me his hero. But all I saw was someone I no longer recognized. "I love you too, Stephen," I said, and meant it. That was the tragedy of it all. Despite everything, despite the violation and the deception, he was still my son. After they left, I sat in my living room, knowing that every word spoken in my house for the next several hours would be recorded. I didn't have to wait long. At 9:47, my phone buzzed with a text from Stephen. "Thanks for a lovely evening, Dad. Sweet dreams. But they hadn't gone home. Stephen's car was parked 2 blocks away, and I could see it from my kitchen window. They were waiting, probably giving me time to fall asleep before making their move. I turned off all the lights and went upstairs, making sure to walk heavily, letting them hear me prepare for bed. Then I crept back downstairs and settled into my office chair, headphones connected to the audio monitoring system, waiting to hear exactly what my son and daughter-in-law really thought of me. What I heard over the next hour would change everything between us forever. At 10:23 that night, I heard my back door open. They had a key. Of course they had a key. I'd given Stephen 1 year ago, back when he was the son who checked on me, who brought groceries when I was sick, who called just to hear my voice. Back when I believed family meant unconditional love and loyalty. Through my headphones, I heard their whispered voices as they entered my kitchen. "Are you sure he's asleep?" Layla's voice was barely audible, but the audio equipment picked it up clearly. "The lights have been off for 40 minutes. He always goes to bed early." Stephen's voice carried a confidence that made my stomach turn. He knew my routines, my habits, because I'd shared my life with him openly, trustingly. Good. We need to be quick about this. I heard their footsteps moving through my house, heading toward the stairs. My heart pounded so hard I was afraid they might hear it from downstairs. They were coming back to my bedroom, back to violate Michael's resting place again. But then something unexpected happened. They stopped in my living room. "Wait," Stephen said, his voice clearer now. "We need to talk about this before we go up there." "Talk about what?" "We already discussed everything in the car." "Layla, I'm having second thoughts. This feels wrong. He's my father." There was a long pause. When Layla spoke again, her voice had changed completely. Gone was the sweet, concerned daughter-in-law from dinner. What I heard now was cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. "Stephen, we've been over this 100 times. Your father is deteriorating. Did you see how he struggled with the menu tonight? How he forgot the waiter's name 3 times? He's becoming a danger to himself. He seemed fine to me. That's because you don't want to see it. You're in denial, just like you were about your mother's cancer until it was too late." The comparison to Martha's illness was a knife twist. Stephen had blamed himself for not recognizing her symptoms sooner, and Layla knew exactly how to weaponize that guilt. "This is different," Stephen said, but his voice was weaker now. "Is it? Your father is sitting on a fortune, Stephen. $350,000 in life insurance, the house worth at least $400,000, his retirement accounts, the safety deposit box, and for what? So he can live alone, forgetting to take his medication, leaving the stove on, eventually hurting himself or someone else? He's not that bad yet. Yet being the operative word, by the time he's obviously incompetent, it'll be too late to protect the assets. We need to act now, while we can still make it look like we're helping him." I felt physically sick. They weren't just planning to rob me. They were planning to destroy my independence, my dignity, my entire life, and they were framing it as an act of love. "The nursing home you found," Stephen said hesitantly. "It's not exactly luxurious." Layla's laugh was like ice cracking. "Sunset Manor is perfectly adequate. It's clean, the staff is competent, and most importantly, it's affordable. We need to preserve as much of the inheritance as possible." "Or, inheritance? Dad's not dying." "Stephen, your father is 73 years old with high blood pressure and a history of heart disease. How long do you think he's going to last in a place like Sunset Manor? 2 years? 3 at most? And then all of this becomes ours." The casual way she discussed my death like it was a business transaction made my hands shake with rage, but Stephen's response made my heart break entirely. "You're right. I know you're right. It's just hard." I know it's hard, baby. But think about our future. Think about the kids we want to have. Your father lived his life, had his family, built his wealth. Now it's our turn. What about the legal aspects? Getting him declared incompetent isn't easy. It will be once we document his decline, the forgetfulness, the confusion, the inability to manage his finances. Dr. Morrison will back us up if we explain the situation properly. He's known your father for years. He'll want what's best for him. Dr. Morrison was my physician for the past 8 years. The thought that they would manipulate him, use his genuine care for my well-being against me, was nauseating. "And tonight?" Stephen asked. "Tonight we get the documentation we need. Bank account numbers, social security information, medical records, everything we'll need to start the process of taking over his affairs. He keeps most of that stuff in the safe upstairs." "I know. That's why we're here." They started moving toward the stairs again, and I felt panic rising in my chest, not because they were going to rob me again, but because I was going to have to listen to them desecrate Michael's memory once more. And this time I'd hear their voices doing it. But Stephen stopped again. "Layla, the urn. My brother's ashes are right there, next to the safe. It feels like we're robbing a grave." "It's just an urn, Stephen. Michael is gone. He's been gone for 14 years. Your father's obsession with those ashes isn't healthy anyway. Maybe when he's in the nursing home, he'll finally start to move on. You don't understand. Dad talks to that urn every morning and every night. It's how he deals with the grief." "Exactly my point. It's not normal behavior for a man his age. It shows he's not processing reality appropriately. Dr. Morrison will find that very interesting when we discuss your father's mental state." I had to grip the arms of my chair to keep from screaming. They were going to use my grief, my love for my dead son, as evidence of incompetence. They were going to twist the most sacred relationship in my life into a weapon against me. "Come on," Layla said. "Let's get this over with." I heard them climbing the stairs, their footsteps deliberate and practiced. They'd done this before. The night I'd caught them on camera wasn't their first invasion of my privacy. It was just the first time I'd been away long enough to check the footage. Through the audio system, I heard my bedroom door open. "There it is," Layla whispered, "right where we left it." The sound of the safe opening was like a death knell. Over the next 20 minutes, I listened to them systematically photograph and catalog my entire financial life. They weren't just stealing information, they were building a case file. "This bank statement shows he withdrew $800 in cash last month," Layla said. "We can use that to show he's being careless with money." "That was for Tommy's birthday gift," Stephen replied. "He wanted to give him cash for his honeymoon." "Documented anyway. Pattern of unusual cash withdrawals can indicate cognitive decline." They were twisting everything. Every generous gesture, every normal financial transaction, every aspect of my independent life was being reframed as evidence of incompetence. But the worst moment came when I heard Layla say, "Move that urn again. I need to get to the papers underneath." "I hate touching it," Stephen said. "It's just pottery and ash, Stephen. Your brother isn't in there. He's not watching you. He's not going to be disappointed in you for taking care of your father." "I know that. It's just..." "Just what?" "Sometimes I wonder what Michael would think about all this. He was always the good son, you know, the one Dad was proudest of." "Michael was 22 when he died, Stephen. He never had to make adult decisions about aging parents. He never had to balance love with responsibility. You're doing what needs to be done." "I guess you're right." "I know I'm right. Now help me with these insurance documents." I sat in my dark office, listening to my son and daughter-in-law destroy my life while using my dead son's memory to justify it. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I felt something inside me simply shut down. The love I'd felt for Stephen, the hope I'd maintained that family bonds could overcome anything, died in that moment. They finished their work at 11:47 and left the same way they'd entered, through the back door, believing they'd been undetected. But I'd heard every word, recorded every second, and now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. This wasn't a family disagreement or a misunderstanding about my care. This was a calculated assault on everything I'd built, everything I valued, everything I was. They wanted to strip away my independence, my dignity, and ultimately my life, all while convincing themselves and the world that they were acting out of love. As I finally climbed the stairs to my violated bedroom, I made a decision that would have surprised the man I'd been just 1 week ago. I was going to fight back, but not in any way they'd expect. I was going to use their own weapons against them: planning, patience, and the element of surprise. Stephen and Layla thought they were manipulating a confused old man. They were about to discover they'd declared war on someone with nothing left to lose and every reason to win. Sunday morning, I did something I hadn't done in 14 years. I didn't say good morning to Michael's urn. I stood in my bedroom doorway, looking at the pewter vessel that had been my daily comfort, my connection to my lost son, and I felt nothing but rage. Not at Michael, never at him, but at what Stephen and Layla had done to that sacred space. They'd contaminated it with their greed, their lies, their casual discussion of my death. The urn would have to be moved. I couldn't leave it there, couldn't let them touch it again, couldn't bear the thought of their hands on something so precious. But first, I had work to do. I spent Sunday creating what I privately called my war plan. If Stephen and Layla wanted to play legal games, if they wanted to use the system against me, then I needed to understand that system better than they did. I needed allies they didn't know about, resources they couldn't access, and evidence they didn't know existed. My first call was to Patricia Williams, an estate planning attorney I'd met at Martha's book club years ago. We'd stayed in casual touch since Martha's death, exchanging Christmas cards and occasional phone calls. Patricia was sharp, experienced, and most importantly, she had no connection to Stephen or Layla. "Gregory, how wonderful to hear from you," Patricia said when I called Monday morning. "How are you managing?" "I'm well, Patricia, but I need some legal advice." Confidential legal advice. The warmth in her voice shifted to professional concern. "Of course. What's going on?" I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head, knowing I needed to sound competent, lucid, and rational. "I have reason to believe my son and daughter-in-law are planning to have me declared incompetent so they can control my assets. I need to know how to protect myself." There was a pause. "That's a serious allegation, Gregory. What makes you think they're planning this?" "I have recordings of them discussing it. They've been accessing my financial information without permission, and they're actively planning to put me in a nursing home against my will." "Do you have these recordings with you?" "I can bring them to your office today if you have time." "I'll make time. Can you be here at 2 o'clock? Patricia's office was in a quiet professional building downtown, the kind of place that spoke of discretion and competence. She was in her early 60s with silver hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. I'd always liked her during the book club meetings, appreciated her quick wit and no-nonsense approach to life. "Gregory, before we begin, I need to ask you some questions that might seem insulting, but I have to establish your mental competency for my own records," she said as we settled into her office. For the next 30 minutes, she put me through what felt like a cognitive examination. Current events, mathematical problems, memory tests, logical reasoning questions. I answered everything correctly, completely, and without hesitation. "Excellent," she said finally. "Now let me hear these recordings." I played the audio from Saturday night, watching Patricia's expression grow increasingly grim as she listened to Stephen and Layla discuss my future like I was already dead. When the recording ended, she sat back in her chair, shaking her head. "This is one of the most cold-blooded things I've ever heard," she said. "They're not just planning financial elder abuse, they're planning what amounts to a slow-motion murder. Can they actually do it? Can they have me declared incompetent based on lies?" "Unfortunately, yes, if they're clever about it. Adult guardianship laws are designed to protect vulnerable seniors, but they can be abused by family members who know how to work the system. If they get a doctor to support their claims, find a sympathetic judge, and present what looks like genuine concern for your welfare, they could succeed." My heart sank. "So I'm defenseless?" "Not at all. You have several advantages they don't know about. First, you're clearly competent and can prove it. Second, you have evidence of their real motives. Third, you're taking action before they've had a chance to establish any legal pattern of incompetence. We can create legal barriers they'll never see coming." Over the next 2 hours, Patricia outlined a comprehensive strategy for protecting myself. We would create a revocable trust that would make it nearly impossible for anyone to access my assets without my explicit consent. We would establish durable power of attorney documents that specifically excluded Stephen and Layla from any decision-making authority. Most importantly, we would document my complete mental competency with multiple physicians, creating an unshakable foundation for my legal capacity. "There's one more thing," Patricia said as we wrapped up. "We need to consider the possibility that they might try to accelerate their timeline if they suspect you're onto them. Are you prepared for that? What do you mean? They might try to have you involuntarily committed for psychiatric evaluation. It's a common tactic. They'd claim you were having delusions, paranoid episodes, maybe even threatening self-harm. Once you're in the system, even temporarily, it becomes much easier to establish a pattern of incompetence. The thought chilled me. How can I protect against that? By making sure you're never alone with them again, and by having everything we discussed today implemented immediately. We're going to work fast, Gregory. By the end of this week, you're going to be legally bulletproof. Tuesday through Thursday was a whirlwind of legal and financial activity. I met with 3 different physicians, all of whom conducted thorough cognitive evaluations and declared me completely competent. I had my financial accounts restructured with new passwords and security measures that only I controlled. Patricia helped me create a revocable trust that protected my assets while maintaining my complete autonomy. But the most important thing I did was move Michael's ashes. Wednesday evening, I carefully lifted the pewter urn from its place beside the safe and carried it to my home office. I'd created a new resting place for him on a shelf between pictures of him as a child and his high school graduation photo. It felt right, having him away from the contaminated bedroom, surrounded by happy memories instead of violated privacy. "I'm sorry, son," I whispered as I positioned the urn in its new location. "I should have protected this sacred space better, but I'm going to make this right." Thursday afternoon, Stephen called. "Dad, how are you feeling? You seemed a little tired at dinner Saturday." The casual concern in his voice made my skin crawl, knowing what I knew. "I'm feeling fine, Stephen, just keeping busy." "That's good to hear. Listen, Layla and I were wondering if you'd like to have dinner again this weekend. Maybe we could cook for you this time. Bring everything over to your place." They wanted access to my house again. Probably to check whether I'd discovered their intrusions, maybe to plant evidence of my supposed incompetence, or simply to continue their surveillance of my daily routines. "That sounds lovely," I said. "What day were you thinking?" "How about Saturday around 6 again? Layla makes an excellent lasagna." "Perfect. I'll look forward to it." After hanging up, I called Patricia. "They're coming back Saturday," I told her. "I think they want to check on me, see if I suspect anything." "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, Gregory, you're not the same man they think they're manipulating. You know what they're planning, you're legally protected, and you have evidence of their conspiracy. But most importantly, you're not alone in this fight anymore." She was right. For the first time since discovering their betrayal, I felt something other than heartbreak and rage. I felt powerful. Friday, I spent the day preparing my house for their visit. The audio recording equipment was tested and ready. I'd installed additional micro cameras in the kitchen and living room, devices so small they looked like decorative buttons on my furniture. Everything they did, everything they said would be documented. But more than that, I'd prepared mentally. I knew they would be watching for signs of decline, confusion, forgetfulness. They needed evidence to support their narrative of my incompetence. I was going to give them exactly what they expected to see, right up until the moment I revealed how completely they'd been played. Saturday evening arrived like the final act of a play I'd been directing all week. At exactly 6 o'clock, Stephen's car pulled into my driveway. I watched from my window as they gathered their supplies for dinner. A large casserole dish, a bag of groceries, and what looked like a small notebook. They were coming to feed me and to document my decline. What they didn't know was that they were walking into a trap that would destroy their plans completely. As their footsteps approached my front door, I touched Michael's urn in its new location and whispered, "Watch this, son. Your old man still has some fight left in him." The performance of my life began the moment I opened the front door. "Stephen, Layla, how wonderful to see you," I said, but I made sure to hesitate slightly, as if I was struggling to remember their names. Come in. I was just... What was I doing?" I paused, looking confused. "Oh yes, watching the news. Or was it a movie?" I saw Layla and Stephen exchange a quick glance. Layla's eyes lit up with what looked like genuine excitement, though She tried to hide it behind a mask of concern. "Dad, are you feeling all right?" Stephen asked, setting the casserole dish on my kitchen counter. "Of course I'm all right. Why wouldn't I be all right?" I snapped, then immediately softened my tone. "I'm sorry, son. I don't know why I said that. I'm just tired, I think." "It's okay, Dad. We brought dinner. Layla made her famous lasagna." "Lasagna," I repeated slowly, as if the word was foreign to me. "That sounds—" "Yes, I like lasagna. Martha used to make lasagna." I paused, looking around my kitchen as if I was lost. "Where is Martha? Is she coming to dinner?" The silence that followed was deafening. Stephen's face went pale, and I saw him grip the counter for support. Layla, on the other hand, was practically vibrating with satisfaction. This was exactly what she'd been hoping for. "Dad," Stephen said gently, "Mom died 6 years ago, remember?" I blinked several times, then shook my head, as if clearing cobwebs. "Of course she did. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me." "It's okay, Mr. Gregory," Layla said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "These things happen as we get older. Why don't you sit down and let us take care of dinner?" I allowed them to guide me to my living room chair, playing the part of a confused old man who was grateful for their help. But from my position, I could see Layla pulling out her phone, no doubt making notes about my episode. "Stephen, could you help me in the kitchen for a moment?" Layla asked sweetly. They thought they were speaking quietly, but I could hear every word from my chair, and of course the hidden microphones were capturing everything. "Did you see that?" Layla whispered urgently. "He thought Martha was still alive." "That's not just forgetfulness, Stephen. That's serious cognitive decline." "I've never seen him like that before," Stephen replied, and I could hear genuine worry in his voice. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "This is exactly what I've been talking about," Layla continued. "He's getting worse, and he's trying to hide it. We need to act faster than we planned." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we need to contact Dr. Morrison next week. We need to get him evaluated before he has a complete breakdown. Tonight proves he's not safe living alone." "But he seemed fine on the phone yesterday." "Of course he did. People with dementia can have moments of clarity, especially when they're trying to hide their condition. But you saw what just happened. He completely forgot his wife was dead. I had to admire her manipulation skills. She was using Stephen's love for me, his fear of losing another parent, to convince him that destroying my independence was actually an act of mercy." "Should we talk to him about it tonight?" Stephen asked. "No, absolutely not. If we confront him directly, he'll become defensive and possibly aggressive. That's typical with dementia patients. We need to be subtle, gather more evidence, and then present it to Dr. Morrison as concerned family members." They returned to the living room, both wearing expressions of forced cheerfulness. Layla had her phone in her hand, and I noticed she was recording our conversation. "Dad, we were thinking," Stephen said, sitting on the couch across from me. "Would you like us to start coming by more often? Maybe we could help you with grocery shopping, meal planning, things like that." "I can manage my own groceries," I said, then immediately looked uncertain. "Can't I? I went to the store last week. Or was it this week?" I rubbed my forehead. "Time seems to move so strangely lately." "That's perfectly normal," Layla said smoothly. "But there's no shame in accepting help. In fact, we were thinking you might enjoy having more company." "My company would be nice," I admitted. "The house gets so quiet sometimes. I find myself talking to—" I paused, looking toward my office where Michael's urn now sat. "I talk to Michael sometimes. Is that strange?" "Not strange at all," Layla said, but I caught her making another note on her phone. "Many people find comfort in talking to loved ones who have passed. Sometimes I think he talks back," I continued, watching their reactions carefully. Not out loud, of course, but I feel like he's listening, like he's trying to tell me something important. Stephen looked genuinely disturbed by this admission. Layla looked triumphant. "Dad, maybe we should talk to Dr. Morrison about some of these experiences you've been having," Stephen suggested carefully. "Why would I need to talk to a doctor about talking to my son?" I asked, letting a note of irritation creep into my voice. Michael is my boy. I'll talk to him whenever I want to." "Of course you will," Layla said quickly. "Stephen just meant that sometimes doctors can help us understand these experiences better." The rest of dinner continued in this vein. I played the part of a man slowly losing his grip on reality, while they play the part of concerned family members, but I could see the calculating looks they exchanged, the notes Layla kept making, the way Stephen's initial worry was being shaped into something more sinister by his wife's manipulation. After dinner, as they prepared to leave, Layla made her move. "Mr. Gregory, would it be all right if I used your bathroom before we go?" "Of course, dear. You know where it is." But instead of going to the guest bathroom downstairs, I heard her footsteps on the stairs. She was going to my bedroom again, probably to check the safe, maybe to plant something that would support their narrative of my incompetence. "Dad, are you sure you're feeling okay?" Stephen asked while Layla was upstairs. "You seem different tonight." "Different how?" I asked, genuinely curious about his perception. "I don't know, confused maybe, forgetful. It's not like you." "I'm getting older, Stephen. These things happen." I paused, then added with deliberate sadness, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm becoming a burden to you." "You could never be a burden, Dad. I love you." The sincerity in his voice almost broke my heart. Despite everything, despite his participation in Layla's scheme, he did love me. He was just weak, easily manipulated, and willing to justify terrible actions by telling himself they were for my own good. Layla returned from upstairs, her expression satisfied. "Ready to go, honey?" As they prepared to leave, Layla turned to me with a smile that would have looked caring to anyone who didn't know what I knew. "Mr. Gregory, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I think Stephen is right to be concerned about you living alone. Would you consider letting us help you explore some options, maybe just looking at some nice senior living communities, nothing permanent, just to see what's available?" "I suppose that wouldn't hurt," I said slowly, "just to look." "Wonderful. I'll make some calls this week and set up some tours. You'll love the places I have in mind." After they left, I sat in my living room, reviewing the evening's performance. I'd given them exactly what they wanted: evidence of cognitive decline, confusion about basic facts, and apparent willingness to consider alternative living arrangements. They would take this information to Dr. Morrison, probably along with the recordings Layla had made, and build their case for my incompetence. What they didn't know was that I'd also given myself everything I needed. Every word they'd spoken about accelerating their timeline, every note Layla had made, every manipulation they'd attempted was now documented. More importantly, they'd revealed their next moves: contact Dr. Morrison, arrange for senior living tours, and continue gathering evidence of my supposed decline. I called Patricia that night. "How did it go?" she asked. "Perfectly. They think I'm losing my mind, and they've accelerated their timeline. They're planning to contact my doctor this week." "Are you ready for phase 2? "More than ready." "Good, because tomorrow we're going to start building the case that will destroy their plans completely. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late for them to recover." As I prepared for bed that night, I stopped by my office to say goodnight to Michael's urn. "Your brother thinks he's protecting me, son," I whispered. "But he doesn't understand that sometimes protection looks like destruction. Tomorrow we start showing them what real planning looks like." I slept better that night than I had since discovering their betrayal. The trap was set, the evidence was gathered, and my enemies had no idea they were walking toward their own destruction. The phone call came on Tuesday morning, exactly as I'd predicted. "Gregory, this is Dr. Morrison's office. The doctor would like to schedule an appointment with you as soon as possible. Are you available this afternoon?" I smiled, knowing that Stephen and Layla had already been there, filling his ears with their carefully crafted narrative of my declining mental state. "Of course. What time?" 3 o'clock? I'll be there." Dr. Morrison had been my physician for 8 years, a good man who genuinely cared about his patients' well-being. As I sat in his office that afternoon, I could see the concern in his eyes, the weight of whatever Stephen and Layla had told him. "Gregory, your son and daughter-in-law came to see me yesterday," he began carefully. "They're worried about you. They mentioned some incidents that suggest you might be experiencing some cognitive difficulties." "What kind of incidents?" I asked, playing my part perfectly. "They said you've been having episodes of confusion, forgetting basic facts, even asking about your late wife as if she were still alive." I nodded slowly, letting my expression show just the right amount of concern and confusion. I have been feeling a bit scattered lately. Sometimes my mind just wanders. I'd like to run some tests, Gregory, just to be safe. Some cognitive assessments, maybe an MRI, to rule out any physical causes. Whatever you think is best, doctor. Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Morrison put me through a comprehensive examination, blood work, cognitive tests, physical assessments. I answered every question correctly, performed every task perfectly, and showed no signs of mental decline whatsoever. Gregory, Dr. Morrison said when we finished, I have to tell you, I'm puzzled. Your test results are completely normal, better than normal, actually. Your cognitive function is excellent for a man of any age. But my son said I seemed confused. Based on these tests, I see no evidence of confusion or cognitive decline. Are you sure you haven't been having any episodes like the one Stephen described? This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. Doctor, before I answer that question, I need you to hear something. I played the recording from Saturday night, starting with Layla's discussion of my supposed decline and ending with their plans to have me declared incompetent. Dr. Morrison's expression changed from concern to shock to outright anger as he listened. This is one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard, he said, when the recording ended. They're planning to use my medical opinion to support a fraudulent competency claim. Doctor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If Stephen and Layla had come to you with evidence of my supposed decline, if they'd been convincing enough, would you have supported their claims? Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long time. Gregory, if family members had presented credible evidence of cognitive decline, and if that evidence had seemed consistent with my own observations, I might have been inclined to support a competency evaluation. That's how these situations usually work. Ina, and if I had actually been declared incompetent, then your son would likely have been granted guardianship, giving him control over your medical care, your finances, and your living situation. The weight of how close I'd come to losing everything settled over me like a cold blanket. If I hadn't discovered their plan, if I hadn't recorded their conversations, if I hadn't taken action when I did, I would have been completely at their mercy. What do you want me to do? Dr. Morrison asked. I want you to document my complete mental competency. I want a written report stating that you see no evidence of cognitive decline, no basis for concerns about my ability to live independently, and no medical reason to question my decision-making capacity. Done. Gregory, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I've known Stephen for years through your medical care, and I never would have suspected him capable of something like this. Neither did I, doctor, neither did I. That evening, I received the call I'd been expecting. Dad, Dr. Morrison's office called, Stephen said, his voice tight with barely controlled anxiety. They said you had an appointment today. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, son. Just a routine checkup. Did the doctor find anything? Any concerns? No concerns at all. Clean bill of health. Dr. Morrison said I'm in excellent shape for a man my age. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Their carefully constructed plan was falling apart, and they didn't understand why. That's great, Dad. We were just worried because of how you seemed on Saturday. I was just tired, Stephen. Nothing more. After hanging up, I called Patricia Williams. It's time, I told her. Are you ready for this? I've been ready since the night I heard them planning my death. Thursday morning, Stephen and Layla arrived at my house unannounced. I watched them through my window, noting their agitated body language, the way Layla gestured angrily as they approached my door. I opened it before they could knock. Stephen, Layla, what a surprise. Dad, we need to talk, Stephen said, pushing past me into the house. Of course. Let's sit in the living room. As we settled into chairs, I could see Layla's eyes scanning the room, noting that Michael's urn was no longer in its usual place. Her expression showed confusion, then suspicion. Dad, Stephen began, we're concerned about you. Dr. Morrison told us you had some tests done, but he wouldn't discuss the results with us. We're family. We should know about your health. The tests showed I'm perfectly healthy, both physically and mentally, I said calmly. But that can't be right, Layla interjected, her mask slipping slightly. We've seen the signs, the confusion, the forgetfulness, asking about Martha as if she were still alive. I smiled, a cold expression that made both of them shift uncomfortably. You mean my performance on Saturday night? The color drained from both their faces. Performance? Stephen asked weakly. The confused old man act, the forgetfulness about Martha, the talking to Michael's ashes, all of it was performed for your benefit. Layla stood up abruptly. You're not making sense. Sit down, Layla. Something in my voice made her comply immediately. I know about everything, I continued, my voice steady and calm. The break-ins to my bedroom, the photographing of my financial documents, the plan to have me declared incompetent and placed in Sunset Manor, the discussions about how long I might live there before you inherit everything. Stephen's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. Dad, I don't know what you think you heard, but I didn't think I heard anything, Stephen. I recorded everything. I reached for the digital recorder on my coffee table and pressed play. Their own voices filled the room, discussing my death like a business transaction, planning my imprisonment, desecrating Michael's memory. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. Oh, Layla whispered. You're not the only ones who know how to plan ahead, I said. While you were busy cataloging my assets and planning my demise, I was protecting myself in ways you never imagined. I stood up and walked to my desk, returning with a thick folder. This contains documentation of my complete mental competency from 3 different physicians, legal documents protecting all my assets in a revocable trust that neither of you can access, audio and video recordings of every crime you've committed in this house, and testimony from my attorney documenting the entire conspiracy. Stephen buried his face in his hands. Dad, please let me explain. Explain what, Stephen? How you were going to put me in a substandard nursing home and wait for me to die? How you moved your dead brother's ashes aside like they were garbage? How you planned to use my grief as evidence of incompetence? I never wanted any of this, he said, his voice muffled by his hands. It was all her idea, but you went along with it, I said quietly. You had every opportunity to stop it, to protect me, to honor your mother's memory and your brother's. Instead, you chose greed. Layla's shock was transforming into rage. You can't prove anything. Those recordings were made without our consent. They won't hold up in court. Actually, they will, I said. This is my home, and you were trespassing. I have every right to record conversations in my own house. But more than that, you violated multiple laws: breaking and entering, theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted financial abuse of an elderly person. The district attorney will find this case very interesting. You're bluffing, Layla said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? I walked back to my desk and picked up a business card. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Elder Abuse Division. She's expecting my call this afternoon. Would you like to be here when I make it? The fight went out of both of them in that moment. Stephen looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go that far, Stephen. You were willing to destroy my life for money. You were willing to use Michael's memory as a weapon against me. You stopped being my son the moment you chose her over everything I taught you about family, honor, and love. I walked to my front door and opened it. I want you both to leave, now, and I never want to see either of you again. Dad, please, leave. They stood up slowly, Layla's face twisted with hatred. Stephen's crumpled with defeat. As they reached the door, Stephen turned back one last time. What about forgiveness? What about family? I looked at my surviving son, this stranger who shared my blood but none of my values, and felt nothing but pity. Family doesn't destroy family, Stephen. Family doesn't desecrate sacred memories for money. Family doesn't plan each other's deaths. You chose to stop being family the night you first broke into my home. After they left, I sat in my living room for a long time, feeling something I hadn't experienced in weeks: peace. The weight of their betrayal was gone, replaced by the freedom that comes from cutting out toxic people, even when they share your DNA. I walked to my office and touched Michael's urn gently. It's over, son, I whispered. They can't hurt us anymore. 6 months later, I received a letter from Stephen. No return address, postmarked from another state. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words. "I'm sorry, Dad. Stephen." I read it twice, then placed it in my fireplace and watched it burn. Some apologies come too late. Some trust, once broken, can never be repaired. Some families are better left behind. I live quietly now, surrounded by friends who chose to be in my life rather than relatives who felt entitled to destroy it. I volunteer at the local hospice, helping other families navigate the difficult decisions that come with aging and loss. I've learned that the family you choose is often stronger than the family you're born into. Every morning and every evening, I still talk to Michael's urn. But now our conversations are peaceful, no longer tainted by violation and greed. I tell him about my days, my new friends, the quiet contentment that comes from living life on your own terms. Sometimes I think he would be proud of how I handled Stephen and Layla. Sometimes I think he would be sad that it came to that. But mostly, I think he would understand that some battles have to be fought, even against people you love, especially when they stop loving you back. The house is mine, the assets are protected, and my independence is secure. More importantly, my dignity is intact, and my grief is private once again. At 63, I learned that it's never too late to choose yourself over people who would destroy you. It's never too late to fight back against those who mistake kindness for weakness. And it's never too late to discover that freedom sometimes looks like a closed door and an unlisted phone number. I am Gregory, guardian of my own peace, protector of my son's memory, and master of my own fate. And I have never been happier.